Welcome everyone. This is our 5 o'clock session for the CUSD Virtual College Fair. My name is Kristen Jones-Manning. I am joined by Pam Lang, who is our awesome representative from the University of Florida. And this session is getting to know the NCAA and the athletic recruiting process. We have an awesome session for you this evening. I'm going to wait a few more moments as families load into our webinar platform. Pam is going to kick off this presentation with some awesome information about the NCAA recruitment process, and I'm going to pick up at the end to talk about some more specific things in relation to CAPO specifically. In the meantime, we have a webinar format that we are working on today. So what that means is that currently your camera and video and audio are turned off, so you can hear and see us, but we cannot hear and see you. This presentation is being recorded and it will be available on our website in the College Fair tab later next week after the fair concludes. It will also be on our YouTube channel. To submit questions to Pam or to myself, please use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. The chat feature is currently turned off unless we need to send helpful links or guides that we can send to you in there as well. We will try to answer your questions live, verbally as a part of the webinar, or in the Q&A window if that's a little bit easier to do. And then as a part of your Calendly registration for the fair, we have a post survey that will be sent to you as soon as this presentation concludes this evening. Please feel free to complete it if you want to input other sessions that we're going to host next year, or if you have a particular session that you really enjoyed, we would love to hear about that. So as we have families load in, I'm going to leave it over, or pass it off, I should say, to Pam, who's going to talk about our full agenda for this evening. So take it away, Pam.
Hi, thanks for joining us. We know you have a lot of things you could be doing tonight, and you're here with us, and we appreciate that. So again, my name is Pam Lang. I am with the University of Florida. I am the West Coast Regional Admissions Officer. So I am based in Southwest Colorado and cover, as of right now, I cover 16 states. So I'm sitting in Aliso Viejo. So I'm right down the road right now. So we're going to go over some general facts about the NCAA, all the different division information, scholarships, terminology, because a lot of times you're working with terminology that you're not familiar with. You have to learn the language. Eligibility, how students are recruited, role of admissions, my role. Then I have some website links, but in between the role of admissions and website links, there's going to be a bunch of information coming to you about CAPO's take on this whole subject. And that's very important since that's where you're at. Next slide, please. So this is probability, and you're going to see another slide about this as well. People say, well, what's my chances? What are the odds of me playing a sport in college? What are the odds of me going on to be a professional athlete? So about 2% of high school athletes are awarded some form of athletic scholarship to compete in college. That's not a whole lot, 2 out of every 100. And then fewer than 2% of those student athletes that go on and play in college are going to go on to be professionals. So those statisticians in the room, do your math and figure out it's not a great odd, but playing sports and athletes and college, it all mixes together and creates an amazing experience. So even though you may not go on to be a pro athlete, being an athlete in college, that's pretty darn cool. It's pretty darn fun. Next slide, please. So what is the difference? You're hearing all this stuff about athletes. Let's start at the beginning. You might have watched football, or you might watch another sport on TV, and you're seeing D1, D2, D3. So D1 schools, these are the big schools. These are like us, Alabama. There's some UCs that play D1 sports, UCLA, things like that. So they enroll the most students, they're the most robust. They have these giant athletic budgets. They have a wide variety of academic programs, and they provide the most athletic scholarship money. The most money comes from D1 schools. D2, they're going to have amazing schools as well. There's going to be opportunity to grow through academic achievement. Keep in mind, not everybody's going to go on to be pro. So if you're going to play a sport in college, you're really going to get an education. What kind of education am I going to get? They have a high-level athletics. They compete in the community. Engagement is also very encouraging for those students to get involved in their communities. Many participants are first-gen college students. So another great opportunity. And then D3. The D3 experience provides, it's not a great environment. You're playing, you have teammates, you're in a school, you're doing all these wonderful things. They're usually the smaller schools that are D3, but there's also really cool things going on at D3 schools as well. And we're going to talk about scholarship money because they do differ. While I did say D1 is the most robust, You're going to find out about that in just a minute as well. Next slide. So here's the scholarship slide. So D1 gives you multi-year cost of attendance. Cost of attendance is terminology that you need to know. Cost of attendance can be tuition, room. So they're going to give you a bed and a pillow, put your head on. They're going to give you food. They're going to give you money for books. Some of them will give you money for some small travel expenses. Some will give you money for, I think other things. So the big thing is just like books, getting your books, because they can be really expensive. So there's a cost of attendance. What is it going to cost you to go? Some of them give you money for a new laptop or a phone, things you need to be a successful college student. So this is where you're going to get these athletic scholarships. D2, they have a partial athletic scholarship. So they're going to offer some money for here and here. And it depends really on the sport that you're playing about how much money is provided and awarded. And then D3, they have no athletics scholarships, but they will still work with you to find scholarship money. It usually has to do with academics. So they want to offer you something. So that's how usually a lot of these D3 schools do. Next slide. So here's some more terminology. So you're learning cost of attendance. Okay, that's like the total cost would be to go and attend. Contact. So anytime a college coach says more than hello, and this is actually in the wording, they're allowed to say hello, but if they say more than hello during a face-to-face meeting, then that's called a contact. And these terminologies, all these terms are going to come into play when you look at an athletic calendar, which we're going to go over in a little bit as well. So that's where you're going to see all this terminology. Evaluation. So this is college coach observation. They're watching you play. So it's really gray area with the way things are virtual now about watching film, but usually the evaluation is an in-person event. Verbal commitment. Student athlete agrees to play sports for a college. Verbal commitments are non-binding. Official commitment. This is where the student athlete signs a national letter of intent. This is binding. If you break a national letter of intent, there are consequences. So a campus visit, any visit to a college campus, unofficial and official. So that's anytime you visit a college campus, unofficial or official. And then the national letter of intent. This is signed by a college-bound student athlete agreeing to attend a D1 or D2 school for one academic year. The D3s, because they're not awarding money, that's probably why they're not included in the national letter of intent. But with the national letter of intent, if you sign a national letter of intent to go to a school and then you change your mind, you are committed for a year. You see that one academic year. If you decide to go someplace else, you're going to have to sit out for a year. You're going to have to wait. That's part of that national letter of intent to sort of bind student athletes to their commitment. Next slide. So the recruiting timeline, I get these questions all the time. I get them from sixth graders. I get them from seniors. They come from all different ages. They come from parents. They come from students. The coaches, the high school coaches usually are pretty aware of what's going on. So ninth grade. And if you're attending this session and you're a 12th grader, don't freak out and be like, oh my gosh, I missed ninth grade. No, it's okay. These are just general suggestions. You can catch up as an 11th grader to the 9th and 10th grade work. You can catch up as a 12th grader to 9th, 10th, 11th grade work. It's okay. So 9th grade, you're going to start planning. Take the right courses. Okay, even though you're an athlete, some athletes think that I'm going to be an athlete. I'm going to play college football or I'm going to play college basketball. I don't need to worry about my academics. You couldn't be more wrong. The NCAA, which is the governing body. So NCAA is like, how do I put it? It's more like the Olympic board that rules over, or like USA Gymnastics that has governing rule over all the gymnastics competitions that are going on in the United States, how the athletes qualify, how they pick the Olympic team. The USA Gymnastics runs that. So the NCAA runs all these athletic programs. All these schools joined the NCAA. Everybody pays the NCAA to be a member of the NCAA. Then the NCAA, they run it. So they take everybody's money and they just run it. They run all the competitions. They run all the tournaments like March Madness. All this stuff is run by the NCAA. So they have rules on the courses that you need to take and the GPA you need to get and test scores that you need to submit. It's their rules. not the colleges, it's the NCAA rules. And when colleges break those rules, that's when they get sanctioned. And you read about it in the newspapers, like so-and-so is in trouble with the NCAA. It's because they broke those rules. So 9th grade, you need to make sure you're taking these courses. You need to talk to your counselor and they will get you a list of these courses. You can sign up for a free profile page. Go to the eligibilitycenter.org and that'll tell you how to sign up for a free page. 10th grade, you officially register, and it does cost money to register for an account with the NCAA Eligibility Center. If you qualify for some of the government assistance like free or reduced lunch and so on, then you can get waivers for that sign up fee. So you just have to check on the website about how to go about that. And then 11th grade, you're going to double check, what are the courses that I'm still taking? Am I on the right track? Will I clear NCAA Clearinghouse Eligibility Center because of the courses I'm taking, the grades I'm getting, and the test scores? We are all sitting in California where this testing is not a good environment right now. They're still getting canceled. I'm hearing from students left and right. Like I signed up for this ACT and it was canceled. And I signed up for the next one and the next one's full. So you need to be signing up for these tests. As of this time, NCAA is still requiring tests. That could change at any time, could change at any point. We know how COVID is just changing everything, just a drop of the hat. But right now you still need a test. So even if the college you're applying to is test optional or does not require tests, NCAA does. You're also at the end of your 11th grade, your counselors are going to help you out. They're also going to do something for you by uploading your current transcript. Then in 12th grade, you're going to take those ACT or SAT again. Make sure NCAA is receiving your scores. And how you do this, if you haven't signed up for a test yet, you may not be familiar, but if you have signed up for a test, when you go to register for the SAT or the ACT, there'll be a website and you can, after you fill in your name and all the important information, there'll be a section where it says, who do you want your scores sent to? Keep in mind when you register for a test, at this point in time, everybody you put on that list, it's free for you to send. So if you pick University of Florida, if you put, whoever you're sending your scores to, you list them down. You need to save a line. If you want to play college sports, you need to save a line for NCAA. So you're going to input the NCAA, you're going to say NCAA, and you're going to treat it just like it was a regular college all by itself. And every college has a code, and you're going to put code 9999. Is that 4 nines? Yeah, I think so. You're going to put 4 nines in there for the NCAA code, because they need official transcript or test scores sent by the testing facility. So the only way for you to do that is officially list them and have it sent. You can go back and do it later, but the last time I looked, it was $25 to send all these test scores at a later date. It's free when you sign up for the test. Okay, double check with your counselor, making sure you're taking the correct test. This is very important. You have to do the work on your end. You're going to be if you are being recruited, you are really going to be interacting with these coaches, but you still have things to do. It's not just a big old easy street. You still need to be held responsible to do a few activities on your own. So I said some of that terminology we're going to talk about in a calendar. So every sport on the NCAA website has a calendar. This one, I just happened to pick D1 beach volleyball, and you can see it has different colors. So the white one, that's quiet period. Nothing goes on. The red, that's a dead period. So these are all terminology you learn that they're not allowed to contact you. You don't reach out, don't do anything with them. It's just very, very quiet. Evaluation period. This is where they can come watch you in a match if they're interested in you to play a beach volleyball. And then contact period. Remember we said about contact when a coach says something more than hello. So the contact period is all the green. And the contact period is not somebody coming to your campus and being like, hey, Elizabeth, I want you to play beach volleyball. It can be phone calls. It can be emails. All these things are contact periods. So if you're a freshman, and every sport has an age division, like if you're a freshman, there's only so much a coach can do. If you're a 10th grader, there's only so much a coach can do. So it goes on and on and on. So if you're reaching out to these coaches, you're like, wow, I just sent like 20 coaches, like a quick video link or this and that other thing, and I haven't heard from anybody. It could be because it conflicts with the calendar. So that's one thing you have to know, or it could be it conflicts with your grade level. So keep in mind, you're not just being ghosted by all these different coaches. There actually could be something going on behind the scenes that you're not aware of. And keep in mind, this calendar, it's the coaches need to know. You don't need to worry about it. So again, eligibility, how do you play? So you have to meet the initial NCAA eligibility. You go through the clearinghouse, and this is what your high school counselors will help you with. And also big schools like us, Ohio State, big schools, they have a whole team of people for that sport that make sure the people that they're heavily recruiting, they're double checking with you to make sure you're doing everything you need to do with NCAA. There's going to be somebody like, hey, did you submit your transcript? Hey, have you taken your test yet? They'll help you out, but you still need to be the mature, almost 18-year-old adult on your own and take care of those things by yourself as well. But it's not over there. Once you get to college, you still have to meet eligibility. Okay, there's a certain GPA you need to maintain as a student athlete. There's a certain number of courses you need to complete every year to maintain your eligibility. So all this needs to come into play as a student athlete on campus. So I just want to make sure everybody has a very firm grasp on the fact that NCAA athletes, your first job is to get an education. Playing sports is fun, it's great. Well, it feels like that's the first job, and the winning and losing. They are making sure, NCAA wants to make sure you are getting a quality education. And this is where you have to come and play with those courses to get NCAA certified, go through the clearinghouse, and then once you get there, you have to maintain that coursework. A lot of teams, because they want you to succeed, they do not want you to fail. They spend a lot of effort recruiting you to come play for them. They have tutors, there is study time. There's all these things built in as a student athlete on these campuses to make sure you are a successful student and you are getting that degree and you're getting that amazing education. It's always fun when you watch like Saturday football and they were talking about a center the other day. Like, yeah, he's a grad school student and he's going to go on, he's working at medical school, or this one's going to be going to dental school soon. So it's really fun to hear that. All righty, next slide. So how are they recruited? You're like, well, I want to play, but how are they going to recruit me? Sometimes, especially if you're at a smaller school or you're far away, like say you're in a little corner of Southern California and you're trying to come to Ohio State or Maryland or Florida, someplace on the other side of the country, while there's many ways for these coaches to keep an eye on you, they may not notice you right away. It's okay to reach out. Go to the school's website. Find your sport. Like for us, University of Florida, it's floridagators.com. Our athletes have their own website for all the different sporting events. Go to their website, find your sport. A lot of the college teams will have specific coaches for positions or offense, defense, whatever it is. Go down the list and find the lowest coach that you can, that like somebody who's lower on the totem pole. Like if you're reaching out to Dan Mullen at University of Florida, he's really busy. So you're going to try to find maybe a defensive lineman coach or a wide receiver coach, or maybe it is your, I don't know, whatever you're playing. Look for that coach, reach out to them. When you do reach out to them, keep in mind they are very busy. They're taking time out of their very busy day to look at your email, which is amazing, but make it easy for them. A lot of coaches like bullet points, especially if you're a track athlete. They want times. If you're a swimmer, they want times. That's really important for the athletes that have timed events. They want to see that right away. If you are a team player, you're going to have video. It's sort of, parents ask me all the time, do I need to spend like so-and-so in town is charging like $800 and they'll make my student a highlight reel. That's a lot of money. And you might want to consider, chances are there's somebody sitting next to you in class that's really good with their cell phone or their video. And all you really need to do is have that video spliced together, stop frame it at the beginning of a segment, circle you, draw a big arrow to you, because it's really hard to tell all the different team players. Just identify you, then run the video, and then pause it, start the next game. They're just wanting to see, they don't want to see the whole game. Some of them want to see a few plays. And if you do talk to a coach, ask them specifically what they would like to see in your highlight reel. Some of them have very specific things they want. Some of them are very general. Ask the coach what they want to see. I don't think you need to spend hundreds of dollars to have somebody help put a highlight reel together. Find your best friend sitting in history and get them a pizza or something. Have them do it for you. You can give them a call, all these things. And they don't want to hear from parents. I know parents, we want to advocate for our students. I mean, we've been advocating for our students before they were even born, but now's the time to turn it over to your student athlete. Let them call the coaches. Let them handle this. We can tell when we read those emails, we can tell the ones from parents and we can tell the ones from students. So let your student athlete head into this. So make your communication very brief but complete. Okay, next slide. Okay, the rule of admissions. We'll be at fairs, and especially like the SEC schools, we'll be at a fair and someone will be like, I want to come play baseball, or I want to come play basketball, or I want to be whatever. We're like, that's really awesome and that's really cool. We deal with admissions. Coaches deal with athletics. It depends on the size of the admissions officer. We may even have somebody in admissions that deals solely with the athletes. So if you see me at a fair, you might want to talk to me about admission requirements to the University of Florida. Because remember, you're still going to have to be admitted. You might want to talk to me about average GPA or test scores, because you're going to be sitting in classes with these other students that are admitted to the Florida, and we want you to be very successful. You might talk about majors. Can you double major? Can you major minor? How can you major where your coaches let you double major? Are there specific majors you cannot be involved in? My son's best friend was a kicker for his undergrad, and they were both going to be the same major. But because of football and the travel schedule, and because of the way that this major worked with lab work and stuff, he couldn't do it. So he had to switch majors specific for his football schedule. So you may want to double check with these coaches, because remember, this is your education. And if you're looking at going at a few different schools, especially if you don't even know what you want to study, if you pick a school that has a very limited amount, can you switch majors? Can you, double check on this stuff, because this is very important for your future. I do not do anything with the athletes besides just say, hey, how you doing? And let's talk about Florida. So that's really it. And that's what I talk to my other D1 friends, they do the same thing. So we can talk to you about our school, but we really can't talk to you about our programs. And actually we are limited in what we can say to prospective athletes. The NCAA, like that calendar, has strong limitations on what we can do with interactions as well. Okay.
Thanks so much, Pam. I'm actually going to pivot a little bit farther back and continue this conversation based on some things that are very specific to CAPO, and that includes some things about eligibility, which Pam touched on briefly. So eligibility in the NCAA or athletic recruiting process sense refers to the types of classes, the GPA, the test score range that a student athlete has. So what are these core courses? Like, what are the things as a student that you need to be aware of and understand about the recruiting process? So for high school, these are classes that are used in the initial eligibility screening. So determining if you are eligible to play athletics at the D1, D2, or D3 level. So to be eligible for any of these types of schools, you will need to have English, you'll need to have math, you will need to have taken your science courses, your social sciences, your foreign language, and then they also include comparative religion or philosophy for some of our religiously affiliated schools as well. One thing that I want to make very clear is that it is more difficult to be NCAA eligible than it actually is to be A through G eligible in California to apply to a four-year university. There are extra courses that you will need to take. Not all of your high school classes will count towards your NCAA core courses. So communicating with your guidance teams, with your high school counselors is super, super important at the freshman level or at any level when you decide that this might be something that you want to pursue. One of the main things to know about eligibility, and I apologize that it's a little bit difficult to see, is that there are 16 core courses that need to be taken in a specific order for you to be eligible for D1 schools. These include 4 years of English, 3 years of math, including Algebra 1 or higher, 2 years of natural or physical sciences, including a lab science, which we do offer within CAPO, and then 1 additional year of all of these things. So what maintains or what limits students from being eligible to play athletics is that they either earn a non-passing grade, which for A through G and NCAA would be a C or better in any of these courses, or they are in a position where they've passed maybe 1 semester of the course and they need to retake a semester in order to be eligible. Before your 7th semester, it says down here at the bottom, is the key thing to remember about eligibility. The sequence and the order in which you have to take and earn your passing grades in these classes has to be before your senior year begins. I cannot tell you how many seniors I've met with, and it is a really heartbreaking conversation to explain that they're not able to retake that one semester of Spanish or that one semester of geometry that was really, really hard in order to meet eligibility. It might help in terms of their A through G qualifications and where they're able to apply to college ultimately, but all of these course requirements are meant to be completed before your senior year begins, with the exception, of course, of your 4th year of English. So if there is something that you can do to proactively plan, it's really understand how your core courses sequence together and how you can take those courses to be eligible starting within your freshman year of high school. We're going to fast forward since Pam covered what admissions looks like and what the recruiting process looks like. And I have some additional statistics in addition to what she explained earlier, just about the overall competition, or what we call the funnel of athletics. So there is a myth that all students who participate in athletics move on to a professional or college playing level. And that is in fact a myth. The recruiting process is highly, highly competitive, as Pam has explained and as I'll continue to explain this evening. So what to expect out of this recruitment funnel. So a college football staff might send 10,000 to 15,000 interest letters out to students and watch maybe 1,000 or 2,000 videos or film submissions before they make 500 phone calls, 65 verbal offers, maybe 200 scholarships. Maybe they extend official visits to even half of those student athletes, and then they sign maybe a maximum of 25 particular players per year. Football is an incredibly specific sport because it's a big team. There are a lot of different positions and a lot of different players. This funnel gets even smaller as you talk about sports like wrestling or like basketball, where the actual team makeup is very, very small and specific per individual school. So using that concept of a funnel, just remember that any coach, any recruiter is going to start out with a very large pool. And ultimately what they're looking for is to refine that pool and to be looking for student athletes that fit a particular need on their team and on their campus. So what are coaches looking for? Coaches are looking for obviously talented athletic ability. I think that goes without saying. Of course, they're looking for talented athletes. They're also looking for students that are coachable, that can take feedback, that can learn from their mistakes. They're looking for team players, students who can work with each other and build up their strengths and weaknesses within their program. They're mostly looking for students within good academic standing. That means that you have the largest potential for success, that you're going to be able to graduate on time, and that you have the mental toughness to balance both your athletic commitments and your academic commitments as well. One piece to note about graduation, which seems a little bit convoluted or not as serious or not as, something that most student athletes think about. Most athletic scholarships are on a 4-year basis. So if you have a large group or a large class of student athletes that is not graduating on time, you actually can't recycle that money for new freshman recruits. So making sure that your academics are in good standing, that you're able to compete in practice, and that you're graduating or working towards graduation is something that all coaches will be looking for, because they have to monitor what that scholarship budget actually looks like. They're also looking for strong character development. What does your work ethic look like? What are your leadership capabilities in any particular circumstance that you're working for? The next few slides are going to give a little bit more specific information about where you are in the process. So what does it mean to be heavily recruited? What does it mean to be moderately recruited? What does it mean to be lightly recruited? And I'm not going to go over every single example that is listed here. That's definitely why we're going to post the slides at the end of this presentation. But I want to give some context for our families that are here tonight about exactly what that looks like at each particular level. So heavily recruited athletes are top tier recruits who will likely go on to compete within D1. The recruiting process for these athletes is outlined kind of year by year below, and heavily recruited athletes are typically those who by National Letter of Intent signing day, they have a letter, they have a commitment either verbally, and then by National Letter Day that they are ready to submit. So these are student athletes who from the very early process in their recruitment cycle know what their options are and have weighed those options specifically. Within as early as their freshman year, they can be receiving offers. students that are moderately recruited. These athletes might not end up necessarily at the D1 level, but there's a good chance that they'll find the right fit at D1 or D3, or excuse me, D2 or D3. So within your senior year, your junior year, you're receiving a few letters, a few scholarship offers, you're evaluating or being evaluated at summer tournaments, and maybe you have less than 10 scholarship offers and less than 10 official visit invites. These are pre-evaluations from the admissions standpoint, but this is what a moderate recruit typically would look like. Lightly or not recruited athletes tend to need to draw more attention to themselves as they work towards potentially earning a scholarship. I would say most students that I speak with about this process, the first question that I ask is, have you told your coach that you want to move forward to this next level? Whether it's your coach in high school or your coach in a club or other pre-professional type of team. And by and large, the feedback that I get from students is, well, no, I don't know. I didn't talk to them yet. The number one thing I could tell students to do is that you need to be very vocal about your intentions for playing in another part of your career. So if you're intending to play to college, if you're intending to go professional or pre-professional, these are things that your coaches need to know. Either they can change their coaching tactics and help get you to a place where you might be more successful, or they're at a spot to tell you what your recruitment level or process might actually be more realistically. Most students who are recruited, as Pam mentioned, for D2 and D3 actually don't earn full ride scholarships. That's really only within D1. And so it's not always for the love of the game if you're looking to be recruited. A lot of the time what students mean when they say they want to be recruited is that they want to earn a scholarship. That's very different. Those processes are two different things. So if you're interested in being recruited or earning a scholarship, those are things that your coaches and your high school counselors definitely need to know. So some of our final takeaways as we wrap up this evening is you really need to work with your high school guidance teams to meet NCAA eligibility, to understand how your core courses maintain or limit your options after high school. You need to prepare your elevator pitch or your email script to reach out to coaches because you are your best advocate. I'll echo Pam's sentiments that as a student, it is a little bit daunting to imagine emailing or reaching out to a coach that you really admire, or an evaluator or recruiter for a team that you've looked up to your entire life. But it is important that students learn how to do that. In the spring, our program at Futureology offers what we call a career success sequence that talks about what is your elevator pitch. How do you create a resume? How do you prepare to interview or to interact in a professional setting with others? That's a great event for student athletes because it gets that process started of how do you behave in a pre-professional way with someone who you're really interested in working with. Begin the process of organizing your film and putting together your highlights early. So if or when they are requested, they can be easily distributed or easily sent. And then consider participating in your sport without a scholarship attached. So scholarships are limited. Would you be willing to play for fun as a walk-on in an intramural league if you're not at the part in your recruiting process or you're not being as heavily recruited as you'd like? I think that decision really comes later on in the process for most students as they start to realize where they are in the process, either that they're receiving offers or not receiving as many offers as they wanted. But because scholarships, or the large scholarships, are really within the D1 level, consider what that would look like if you went to a D2 or D3 school instead. So we definitely have some questions that have come in. Thank you so much to my colleague B for answering some of those in the Q&A function. We have definitely some time to answer more. If there are any additional questions that you all would like to ask of Pam or myself about the recruiting process, we're happy to answer those. This final slide just includes the NCAA website. It includes the 21 and 22 guide for college-bound student athletes. This is a great link because it goes over and describes all of the core courses, all of the requirements, and any changes that have happened due to COVID. And then the Eligibility Center itself is also there. Within Capo, we upload transcripts for students for the Eligibility Center all the time. That's something that your high school guidance team will be very familiar with if you're interested in how that works. But beyond that, I want to make sure that we have time for questions. So thank you again to Bea. She's answering so many of those questions in the Q&A. If there are any more, Pam and I will both be here for the next 5 to 10 minutes to make sure we're able to answer those for you. And in the meantime, feel free to register for the other events that we're having during the fair. We have 2 more days still of events throughout this week with other reps like Pam and other schools that will be joining us. So I don't see too many more questions in the Q&A. Pam, is there anything else that you'd like to add for our families about the recruitment process or about the Eligibility Center in terms of its interaction with admissions?
The only thing I want to just echo on is double check with your school, because if we have somebody wants to be a Gator and they look at the NCAA requirements to meet eligibility, it has 3 years of math, when actually to apply to the University of Florida, you need 4 years of math. So this is where you really need to communicate with your admissions officer if you'd like, or the coaches. They all know what you need to do. So check with the coaches. I did drop that link for the student athlete guide into the chat, actually not in the Q&A, but in the chat. That is like 40, I think it was like 45 pages on it. Has anybody seen it lately? It's long and it's very thorough. This is one of those things that you just have to sit down and read and you get all your information.
I'm going to also include a few other links that I will title in front of the hyperlink for families that we share with our students in our one-on-one appointments with prospective athletes. Some really quick kind of one-page guides for all of you. One of them will be NCAA's policy on testing, specifically for students who are applying for last year, 21-22, but also this year's seniors applying for the 22-23 school year. Testing is not going to be required for this year's seniors. Moving forward, it is to be determined, but hot off the presses recently this week, their task force did announce that they are recommending that they do away with testing requirements moving forward. So we're going to see what the NCAA has to say about that, but their specialized testing task force did recommend doing away with testing altogether.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Bea. We do have one question in the Q&A that I'd like to address, and I'd love to hear your take on this as well, Pam. So we have a prospective family that their friend is an athlete currently at UCLA, which is a D1 school. They were told to consider athletics, education, and a social life and pick 2 of those things. Do you feel that there's any truth to this? I will say in my experience, there is a lot of truth to that. Before I was a counselor at Futureology, I actually worked for a D1 athletic academic center for student athletes. So the place where student athletes go to receive tutoring to make sure that their eligibility is in fact intact, that they're eligible to play based on their course qualifications, their completions, all of those things. And I would say the amount of time that student athletes, especially at the D1 level, spend practicing for their sport in class and then completing those other academic requirements. So tutoring, homework help, all of those types of groups, meeting with their NCAA representatives is extensive. For an athlete who is in a sport like football that has a very long season, that practices even off season, they could be spending at any point, a student athlete could be spending up to 10 to 12 hours a week in practice, 10 to 12 hours a week in school, and then an additional 10 to 12 hours a week at the tutoring center. And that's outside of any time that other time they need to do homework, time that they want to spend with their friends or their significant others. So Pam, I'd love to hear your take on some of those balancing acts at especially University of Florida, which is a very large school.
Yes, I was asked to run track. I was a hurdler at a D1 level and I turned them down. I was like, I want to have a different experience. So I did turn down the D1 track, but I chose to play club volleyball. So all these schools have club teams, which you still compete. You still wear the uniform. You still travel around and visit all these other schools, but you also can have another life. So yes, it is very encompassing. We were on campus one summer and our baseball team just came out of the Baseball World Series. We were on campus 2 weeks later and I looked over and there was the baseball team in their uniform practicing. I don't know if they had 1 week off, 2 week off. We had a friend who played football for FSU and they had a bowl game. And so they didn't come home until after New Year's. So they were still in practice, still at school, doing everything for that bowl game. They didn't get to be with their family for Christmas and New Year's. So it definitely is time consuming. And I would think that pick 2 is probably a little closer to the truth than not.
I would totally agree, Pam. If we don't have any other questions, I want to just direct everyone's attention to all the wonderful resources that Bea was able to put in the chat. Those will also be linked on the YouTube description when this video is posted, because I know that there is a ton of information out there, that it's fluid and changing often. And for most of our families, if they're at different ages, there will be different answers depending on their question. We have one more thing, Tara, that I would love to address. So you've been advised that scholarship money is not a thing as much as an admission ticket due to applying as an athlete. So I would love to put this to rest, and I know probably, Pam, that you would too. So admissions and financial aid and athletics are 3 separate departments at each particular college and university. So some of the things that we hear really often as a part of the recruitment process is, you know, I heard that my coach is going to tell admissions that I need to be accepted, and then they're going to tell financial aid that I need X amount of a scholarship. And I don't know about you, Pam, but I've never been able to get to those 3 departments in one particular day. So I would love for you to describe, from the admission standpoint, more of what you typically see in terms of a D1 athletic recruit come through.
University of Florida is big enough. We actually have somebody in the office that handles all of the athletes. Every once in a while, one of those applications does slip through and we do see it. And you still need to apply, and we're still going to do holistic reviews. And if the athlete writes, like for the essay, just writes, I want to play football, guess what? You're going to get a 1 and a read on a scale of 1 to 5. So you still have to do your application. We have athletes that I've gone back through just for fun to read applications for, because we have, you know, Olympians, and they still had to apply to the University of Florida. So just keep that in mind. You are still impressing people, not just being coach, but you still need to impress admissions. You still need to be on your best behavior and be a gentleman or a lady when you talk to these people. But yes, we will see all this information.
And I would, sorry, Kristen, I would say also that being a really good student makes you an extremely desirable recruit for athletics, because then the coach has multiple reasons to want you to be on the team. In addition to your exceptional athletic ability, the fact that you do well in school will just make you a much more desirable recruit. So keep that in mind.
Absolutely. I was just going to add that a few years ago, I had a student who tried to explain to me that they didn't need to apply to the college that they were intending to play sports at because their coach was going to take care of it. And I made very clear that there was no way that was possible, that even if you'd like to, or you have a verbal commitment, you signed your national letter of intent, every student athlete still goes through the application process. You still have to complete the application to attend that school. And that is completely separate from your scholarship offers and from what your coach is able to do in terms of like making sure that your paperwork is finalized and some of those things. So definitely make sure that you understand the admissions process at any particular school that you're interested in. Your coaches admittedly might not be as well versed in admissions